Good afternoon and welcome to our fourth North America Industry Update. It's great to see so many of you joining us this afternoon. We've got a really great webinar planned for you today. We will be joined later by both Jane and Pip Harrison, our Managing Director, so we look forward to hearing from both of them. Our webinar will probably be a little bit shorter than normal today, given we have got a focused discussion with Pip and Jane. So we will look forward to hearing from them later. Just a couple of housekeeping points to begin with. If you guys do have questions that you want to field to Pip or Jane during the webinar today, please field those using the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavour to answer for you during the course of the update this afternoon. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Chris Allison, Head of Commercial Partnerships based in Los Angeles with Tourism Australia. I'm just going to start with a couple of quick announcements from Tourism Australia in terms of some things that we wanted to share with you, and then I'll introduce Jane and Pip shortly. So firstly, I just wanted to share with you guys a new resource that we're making available to all of our key partners in all of our international markets. This is based on feedback from many of our partners in terms of how they can access in a more seamless and centralized way all of Tourism Australia's fantastic assets, resources and guidance that we make available to partners when we do have campaigns in market, and also how partners can take access to Tourism Australia's fantastic marketing resources to help promote Australia through their channels. And for those of you that have worked with us over the years, you'll know that this is a very manual process typically, and involves lots of email back and forth, etc. So we have now launched a new centralized trade resources hub, and this is available to any of our partners in all of our key markets. And as I say, this is a centralized resource hub where we make available pretty much anything that you should need to help promote Australia using all of the fantastic assets from Tourism Australia through your channels. The website is now live. It's available at resources.australia.com. And you can come in here, log in and request access, and once you're approved, you can come in here and access and download any of the assets that you do need. So I would encourage you guys all to take a look at this and look at the amazing assets and resources that we have available to you all. And the second thing I'm excited to share with you today is just some information about the Australia Marketplace. So normally we would be right in the middle of planning the Australia Marketplace event in person, which would take place in August in Los Angeles. I think we announced earlier this year that the event would not be taking place in person, obviously, and we would be looking to transition Australia Marketplace to a virtual event this year. So we're pleased to announce that applications for joining our Australia Marketplace event online will be open for you as buyers within the next couple of weeks, but we just wanted to highlight to you today a couple of changes from when we first announced the event. So we originally announced the event as a 3-day event taking place in October. The event will now be a 4-day event taking place in October, and it will be split over 2 weeks. So the event will take place on October 21st, 22nd, 28th and 29th. So please mark those dates in your diary. We will be distributing a save the date to all of you later this week, along with a link to the event website where you can find out more information on the format of the event and how to apply to attend. But we certainly look forward to receiving your applications when they open in a couple of weeks. And we've got a fantastic event planned in collaboration with our state and territory partners. So we look forward to that. So that's all the announcements we have today. So we'll move into today's order of business, which is really about hearing from our wonderful leader, Pip Harrison. Pip Harrison is known to many of you. She's our Managing Director at Tourism Australia. And we're also joined today, as always, by Jane Whitehead, who is our VP for North America. So we're not going to do a formalized presentation today. What we thought we'd do is have more of an informal discussion between Pip and Jane and just have a chat about everything that's going on in our world at the moment. So hi Jane and welcome Pip. Firstly, it's great to see you and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Nice and early.
Yeah, that's right. So we appreciate you getting out of bed a little bit earlier So Pip, you've actually just come back from your own holiday, I think, in the last couple of days, and I think it's the first time you managed to get away since the restrictions have started to ease in Australia. So maybe would you mind just sharing your own experience of your first domestic holiday since lockdown?
Sure, sure. I mean, there has been, I can safely say, a lot of pent-up demand for domestic travel in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in most countries. Most people have been locked down for a couple of months, and so the easing of restrictions has meant that everybody is getting out and about. And I can tell you, if you're heading north out of Sydney on the Pacific Highway at the beginning of the school holidays, it did feel very much like we were back to some sort of sense of normality. So we're right in the middle of school holidays here, so everybody is using that opportunity to take a break, and I did as well. Went north to Port Macquarie, where my sister lives, on the beach up there, and it's wonderful. We're having a bumper whale season at the moment. There are just pods of whales absolutely everywhere. It's like a super highway. So we jumped on a boat and went out and spent some time with those beautiful creatures that were breaching and playing all around us, and also went back to some of the wineries that are up in that region and had lunch. And so a lot of the businesses that are opening up are really, turning their businesses from a period of hibernation into looking at how they operate in a COVID safe way. And so there are lots of protocols there in terms of social distancing and hand washing and making reservations and group sizes, but it really doesn't seem to affect the tourism experience too much, which I'm really happy to say. It does limit the numbers that those operators can have on their products, but they're certainly enjoying a bumper period right at the moment. That's not to say that that we're out of the woods, but it certainly is nice to have a little bit of business going around, and it was great to be able to enjoy that myself.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I mean, it's been a busy few months since you took the helm, so I'm sure you were ready for a break after everything over the last few months. So that's great to hear. Hey Pip, so let's get into the discussion. So I think it would be remiss if we just didn't get the elephant in the room out of the way straight away. Please can you just give us an update in terms of where we're at from our perspective with updates on international borders reopening?
Yeah, look, I think firstly, just I apologize that we are not able to be completely clear on this. I know that there is a lot of frustration out there with our partners around, giving a little bit of clarity, because I know that you're holding bookings and you want to understand when you can move those bookings to, and when you can start really, building business back up. And I'm not able to provide that clarity, but what I can say is that, the Minister for Tourism and Trade here, Simon Birmingham, has gone out in the press recently with quite a conservative, and so has the Prime Minister, with quite a conservative view on when we might reopen our international borders. If it was my business, I would probably not be anticipating that it will be this year. My view is that we will open up the borders in a staggered manner over the next period of time, but I think it's going to be in the sort of Q1 or Q2 of next year. Is my personal view. That being said, we are being very much led by health issues at the moment and the twists and turns that takes. And there is no doubt that this government is taking a very conservative view around managing the outbreaks of the virus. And we have had a few clusters in Melbourne over the last couple of weeks, which has led to the borders, with just the internal state borders, being closed down again to Victoria. So, I think we are very much focused on trying to get those internal borders open, but are now also looking at how are we going to open up international borders? What is that going to look like? And our view is, you know, it probably will open up in a very staggered manner. The first cab off the rank will probably be New Zealand, because we are in a little bit of a similar situation in terms of managing the virus. And so there is a lot of talk about a trans-Tasman bubble. I am talking to my counterpart in Tourism New Zealand, the lovely Stephen England Hall, on a quite regular basis on those issues and how we manage that. And what does that mean for the US market? I guess it means that as we open up to another international border, it gives us some I guess some understanding of how we can manage international arrivals, how we manage, outbreaks, how we manage people through international airports and build volume again. And so I think the sooner we can do that with New Zealand, the sooner we are going to get comfort that we can manage that from an international perspective, and the sooner other markets can come on board. The other conversation that we are having is around cohorts. So opening up not only to certain regions, but to certain groups of people in a staggered manner. So there is a lot of talk about international students, so longer stay people. And so maybe getting students back, having them quarantine for 2 weeks and then go on with their studies in Australia. Visiting friends and relatives. So there's a bit of talk around different cohorts and how we might open up in a staggered manner from a visa point of view there. But look, we're probably looking at the medium to long term in terms of arrivals from the US.
Okay. I think, I mean, the New Zealand piece is really interesting because it is a sizable market for tourism to Australia, and I think it would be a good market to hopefully provide some scale for our operators in Australia, but also provide some scale that we can really kind of test those nuances with how we open up a market of that size, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what, there's no doubt that, the US is one of our star markets. We classify our markets in several different ways, and the US market is the top classification, if you like. And what that means is that is how we allocate our resources. So we look at the markets that we think have the most potential, and the US is right up there. And I've got to say, even though we are looking at a longer period in terms of border opening, that does not mean that we are going quiet in the US market. We will continue to invest heavily. I think there's going to be this funny period where other destinations are open and we're not. And I think we have to work out how we manage through that. But we are definitely keeping, the dreaming alive. We want to keep, making sure that audiences understand all there is to see and do in Australia, because the booking lead time is long from the US market. It's 3 to 6 months. So even if we were looking conservatively at opening in July 2021, we really need to start, getting active with both of our brand marketing, but also our partnership marketing by the end of this year. So, we are coming up on, having to really ramp up our activities sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, I think also we've been reflecting on, you mentioned the strength of the US market there collectively with Canada as well being, really strong growth. And I think before we went into the collective crises over the past 6 months, we've seen really strong growth out of both markets either side of the border. So
we were seeing growth of 9-10% out of the US and Canada, and I just say thank you so much for that. We were so excited about that business, and it was going really, really well. And, longer term, I get asked a lot about what our focus will be when we come out of this. Are we going to change the market that we focus on? So Tourism Australia looks at the opportunity around the world in terms of the markets that we can operate in, because we have limited resources in terms of budget and headcount. And there's 15 markets that we see as the big opportunity for Australian tourism. The US is right at the top of that. And I get asked whether that will change. And actually longer term, I just don't think it will. I don't think that there are, there's any markets that are particularly going to suddenly turn off for Australia or necessarily turn on for Australia in terms of the sort of traveller that we are trying to focus on, the high value traveller who wants to experience what we have to offer and travel far into our regions and you know, loves the aquatic and coastal lifestyle that we offer. So I just don't see any of that changing in the longer term. I just think, you know, the challenge for us as an industry is just to get through the next period of time, be it sort of 6 months or 12 months. We just need to get through this period. But then I really do see that that the markets will bounce back to you know, where they were previously. How long that's going to take, I think, is the big question.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I think the other thing that we also, I guess, reflect on amongst us is, you know, the overall challenges we've had in the last 6 months to this date. You know, we've had collective crises that we've had to deal with, and, you know, now thankfully we're starting to see some green shoots on behalf of our partners in Australia, which is awesome. Can you maybe just share with us maybe your perspectives on kind of how we've dealt with the last 6 months as an organisation, but also how we see our industry partners dealing with the last 6 months and how they're kind of looking forward as well?
Sure. I mean, last time I was in the US was in February, and we were over there talking about, sorry, it's January, talking about the bushfires, and you know, and it was, you know, quite a big crisis for us at that point, because there was such a negative perception of what was going on in Australia, because there was just so much international coverage of the fires, and there was just, you know, images of raging infernos all over the press, and we were really trying to counter that. And you know, we almost look back nostalgically now when that was our biggest problem, because you know, not underplaying that scenario, because it really was a terribly catastrophic fire season. And, you know, and I think there's been a lot of soul searching in terms of how we manage that as a country going forward, and, you know, and, you know, how we avoid that happening again. And, you know, we certainly are not moving away from that and focusing on the lessons that we learnt from that. And there are certainly still some people dealing with the fallout of that from an infrastructure point of view. But the reality with bushfires in Australia is that, you know, it is a natural part of the bush regeneration here. And, you know, we are seeing that a lot of the areas that were terribly burnt, and I drove through some of them last week, are, you know, green again and regenerating. And, you know, and so from, it seems that, you know, that we have sort of recovered to a certain extent from that. And I think, you know, there are some areas, particularly around the south coast, south of Sydney, south of Melbourne, that are still recovering. But by and large, you know, we are sort of through that period. And I would be interested, actually, from the audience here to understand whether, perception-wise, whether that's still an issue when you're talking to clients, and whether that still comes up, or whether it just has been surpassed by COVID issues. And so I guess from a Tourism Australia point of view now, we're very much focusing on, you know, the dreaming and planning phase in our international markets, trying to keep Australia top of mind when people are choosing their next holiday destination, bearing in mind how long the lead times are. But as an organisation, we haven't focused on domestic for 8 years. We're back in domestic right now, really fishing where the fish are, if you'd like. And our focus is on, you know, ensuring that the businesses, there's 300,000 businesses in tourism in Australia. Most of those are small businesses who really having a tough time at the moment and need our support. And we're focusing on how we can support them, keep them going through this period through domestic tourism, so that they are ready when international borders open again. But definitely, I think there is no sugarcoating the fact that domestic does not make up for international business. And we are really focused and speaking to the government frequently on, you know, on reopening issues and how we turn our focus to that, and what we need to do to get international visitors back into Australia.
Mm.
And the advantage of having travel within Australia reopen as well, as we move into this phase of how we keep that inspirational content, you know, relevant and fresh, and continue to do that job of creating that inspiration while we're still restricted in our movement here, is that it does give fresh content, fresh stories, the opportunity to leverage media that can travel and distribute that content in North America. So we'll be looking at all the ways that we can do that to make sure that we are continuing to inspire our audience here.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we have found, which has been really interesting, is that two areas of our organisation have been busier than ever, and one of those is PR. So there has been a lot of consumption of PR. A lot of journalists, I guess, are doing desk work at the moment, looking for good news stories and really eating up a lot of the stories that we are pitching. So our PR teams are hugely busy at the moment, which is great, and it's always great for a third party to tell our story, and we think that that's really important, so we continue to focus on that. And the other one is the Aussie Specialist, so the training programs. It's been wonderful to see that people have been interested in learning and engaging during this period. And you know, we had a KPI for training 33,000 people last year. We ended up training 80,000 because there just was so much opportunity, because people had time on their hands, and it was great to see that they, you know, they were interested in learning more about Australia at that time.
That's awesome. I mean, we've been talking to our partners locally, Pip, about the work that we've been doing in that regard, particularly over the last quarter. And you know, I think it's been, again, from our perspective, been really great to see people's appetite to engage with us as a destination, even though they can't necessarily sell us fully at this time. And you know, I think we've got a really strong plan to make sure that we continue those efforts going forward, because we think it's a really important part of our offering to partners here, and I think our partners really value the program. So, long may that continue, which is awesome. In terms of as domestic is starting to open up, I think, you know, we try and stay connected to our partners locally in Australia as much as we can, and have feedback from them. And I think, you know, we're hearing very strongly that, you know, there's the green shoots are providing real confidence to a good chunk of our partners in Australia right now, that there is demand out there and that people are willing to travel. Can you tell us any more about, just more broadly, what we're hearing and sensing from industry in Australia now as people do start to travel around the country again?
Yeah, look, I think there's two speeds with that. So the tourism businesses around the urban centres are certainly doing well, because you know, people are happy to jump in their cars and you know, certainly, you know, they're quite full. The interesting thing, though, for us is that Australians travel in Australia slightly different than international audiences do. And our challenge is really around those businesses that have been focused on international travelers, and, you know, and how they pivot towards a domestic market, because, you know, I'm not worried about hotels in the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast necessarily filling up. What I am worried about is the more experiential products that we have that international travelers love us for, and, you know, exploring the Kimberley and the Red Centre and all of those places, the Great Barrier Reef. And so we're really focused on making sure that those regions that have enjoyed such high levels of international visitation get through this period. And it's great to see. We just opened up the borders with Queensland on the 10th of July, and all of the flights heading into Cairns were full and have been full for a week. So obviously, you know, people are starting to have a look at their backyard and exploring that. But I do think we're not out of the woods yet. Certainly, there's no point sugarcoating that. You know, there's not a lot of business travel going on, and there is, you know, there's pockets of just great success, but we are, you know, we're still on a journey with that.
So then, just maybe looking forward a little bit, I think a lot of the questions that we get from our partners in market, you know, first and foremost is definitely about when's the border going to open. So I think we talked about that at the beginning, but I think the other piece that our partners do continue to question us on, well, if we can't have a date when the border is going to open, how can we get more clarity on when they won't open before to give more assurance to their business, and help them message to their customers more strongly? Is there anything that you can talk to us about in terms of discussions of that regard at either government level, or how we are feeding into government some of those insights from our partners?
Yeah, so we are getting lots of really good feedback globally about, you know, some ideas around how we can potentially open. You know, are there more interesting ways that we can do quarantine, for example? And there's some really great innovative ideas out there, because, you know, by and large, the travel industry has a lot of entrepreneurial small businesses that make it up. And so I just wanted to reassure everybody that we're definitely you know, taking those ideas and very proactively talking to the government about them. You know, Tourism Australia reports into the Minister's office. We speak to them very, very regularly on what the issues are from the industry, and they are very interested and engaged in that, because, you know, people, one thing that's come out of this crisis that's probably a silver lining is that the government and it has always understood how important tourism is, but I think it's really, there's never been more focus from the government point of view on tourism, and people really understand the importance of tourism to the Australian economy. And so there is a lot of I guess, conversation around what the issues are globally. You know, and I appreciate that it's probably frustrating because there's not a lot coming back out, but I can tell you there is a lot going in terms of, you know, what are the issues and how do we solve them, and what is the plan going forward. And I really hope in the next couple of months to be able to come back out with some, you know, some more information around that. I just don't have it right at the minute.
That's great, thank you. So last probably couple of questions from me. So in terms of, and maybe this is a collective one to both of you and Jane, in terms of, you know, while we're kind of still in this period of uncertainty, and just given the reality of how the situation is evolving in a North America perspective in terms of COVID, what are some of the things that we can continue to do as an organisation in that intervening period to make sure that we keep Australia in front of our customers and keep them dreaming about Australia, particularly in these markets?
Do you want to answer that one, Jane?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are a few things that we're looking at. I mean, one is we will need to continue to, we certainly won't be going dark. I mean, we will continue to be active, both in terms of our consumer activities and our industry engagement activities. So, as I mentioned, certainly with travel resuming in Australia, that does help in terms of we're looking at all the ways we can leverage that to generate fresh, inspirational content. And I think coming out of this situation as well, I mean, we've certainly seen, as you mentioned, in terms of the Aussie Specialist Program, we saw double-digit growth in the number of Aussie specialists that, well, certainly trained as well as or registered for the program, engaged with our activities, but also qualified as Aussie specialists. So we're up over 3,200, which is really important because I think people will, the advisor community is going to be more important than ever coming out of this, because probably we're going to see a more complex travel environment and landscape, and people will really, you know, need, you know, the support of their advisors. And I think so that community will be more important than ever. So we want to make sure that they're really armed to help clients book their travel to Australia. At a global level, as Pip mentioned, obviously we're looking at what are the segments that are going to travel first, and certainly we are feeding into that from a North America perspective and working with you know, our global colleagues to look at all the opportunities around that. We certainly see that the premium segment will be really important for North America, of course, and we're also looking at the opportunities with younger travellers that might want to have, you know, a pent-up appetite for exploration and travel, as well as visiting friends and relatives as well. And we certainly expect that people will be wanting to reconnect with, obviously, friends and family as soon as they're able to. And then I think it's really making sure that we're really ready to support the industry in restarting their businesses at the very earliest opportunity. So we will need to really think out of the box on that, and really stay connected, with all of our industry partners as we're trying to do through this this period that we're in now, to make sure that we have plans in place to work very closely with industry to support the restart when that's possible. And so we'll certainly see a real focus on partnership activity there.
Yeah, look, I want to reiterate that. I think partners are going to be really important in how we come out of this, and we are certainly looking at everything at the moment. I think nothing is off the table right at the minute in terms of how we navigate our way out of this. It's fairly unprecedented event, so we're looking at unprecedented ways of navigating our way out of this. So really open to input and ideas on that.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Thank you. And then Pip, so just to maybe round off the conversation to our partners here in North America, what would you say to them in terms of how they can continue to navigate and continue to, I guess, support Australia in these difficult circumstances, particularly for businesses that have wider choice of destinations that they offer and can offer to their customers? What would you say to them?
Well, firstly, I'd say thank you. Thank you for still focusing on Australia. I think, your support has always been important, and it is incredibly important at the moment. So thank you very much. And I think, if it was me, I'd probably be fairly conservative in terms of when I was looking to rebook people, and I'd probably be looking at going really hard, in the second half of next year, and really focusing my attention on that, because we will be open again. We are so focused on this market. We really, want to do what we can to keep the dream alive over this period when we're closed. But, as soon as when we see any green shoots in terms of opening dates, we will be back, and we'll be coming back and working really hard to build that business back up again to the great success we've had in the past.
And I think, obviously Australia has always sort of ranked top of destinations that North Americans most want to visit. And I think coming out of a crisis like this, people will sort of want to act on those sort of aspirations that they have, and what's on their kind of bucket list, to bring that forward. And so that's what we really want to emphasize. And I think certainly in terms of the types of attributes of a destination that we're seeing in the research that people will want coming out of this, obviously, open space and a safe environment, but amazing, nature and wildlife and culture, and, reconnecting with people. I mean, we think we've obviously got so many advantages in that we can leverage, both to sort of encourage people to think about it and inspire people right now, but that we can sort of really leverage when we can put plans in place to start to promote conversion activity as well.
Cool, that's awesome. Hey, so we do have a couple of questions that have come through. First one, I think is just really a point of clarity. So I think, Pip, at the beginning when you were talking about border openings and your perspectives on that, I think you were mentioning, realistically, looking at Q1, Q2 next year. I think just a point of clarity in terms of, like, do you mean Q1 as in the January, March quarter, or
Yeah.
Our fiscal quarter?
I was talking about calendar year, so yeah.
Okay. Awesome, thank you. And then second question here is around Canada. So the question is, would we be considering Canada separately to the US for border openings, and what do you think that could or may look like if that was a situation that we were facing?
We are. There's a lot of conversation at government level about bubbles and separate cohorts, and I know that Canada has been separated out from the US from that perspective. So I don't know anything further than that, but I do know that we don't necessarily consider Canada and the US as one destination, so they are considered separately. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Hey, well, there's no more questions there, but we have got a couple more minutes, so I'll probably just ask you one more question, Pip, just to give anyone else a chance to pop in any questions there. we got a yay for Canada to that answer, so thank you. So obviously you've just been on vacation, but where's next on your bucket list in Australia for your next holiday?
I think, I think the Eyre Peninsula is, Jane talked a little bit about wide open spaces, fresh air, fresh food, fresh produce. I think the Eyre Peninsula has so much to offer in South Australia, just to the west of Adelaide. And, it's really well known for its oysters. You can swim with sea lions, and it's just a beautiful remote part of the world. And that's always been on my bucket list. So I'm looking at down there next.
Awesome.
What about you?
And same question to you, Jane. What's top of your list? I know you're down in Australia for a little while, but what's on your list for exploring in Australia next?
Yeah, well, I'm currently in Queensland, so I think as soon as I can, I might get out to get to the beach. Actually, I'm looking forward to doing that. So right now, yeah, as soon as possible.
Awesome. Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
I think for me, so I've been to every state in Australia apart from the NT. So I'd love to get up to the top end and explore Darwin and those parts of the country. I think it's been exposed to a couple of operators up there over the last few weeks, and looks just such a fantastic experience and something very different and unique. So that's definitely the top of my list for when I can get back down there sooner rather than later, of course, hopefully. Yeah.
Right. Well, we look forward to welcoming you all down very, very soon. And, we are talking a lot at the moment about what our reopening plans are. And because our reopening is likely to be later than other countries, we're going to go out with a big bang. So, watch this space in terms of how we reopen. We like to do things fairly large at Tourism Australia. So,
yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll probably close it off there. Pip, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We thank you for sharing your insights and information about what we're up to more broadly. And I'm sure we will be excited to welcome you back onto one of these in the next few weeks and share some more information. And thanks also, Jane. So we'll probably just close it off there. I just wanted to share quickly with you guys another webinar update again in a couple of weeks. So that will be planned to take place on July 28th. At the same time, we'll be coming out with an invite for that later next week. At this stage, we're planning to have our partners at TripAdvisor join us. I'm sure many of you have seen some of the amazing research that TripAdvisor has been putting out into market over the last few weeks. So we have invited them to come and talk to us a bit more specifically about that and how that applies to Australia and how we talk about it in this market. So we look forward to hearing from them on those insights. I think that's it for today. Thank you all again so much for joining us. Thanks to Pip, thanks to Jane. As always, for those of you that have joined us for the past few updates, you will be receiving an email from us shortly asking you to complete a very quick survey about the webinar today. So we'd really value your feedback on that. And as always, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me or Jane or any of the team, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. In the meantime, we hope you're staying safe and well, and we look forward to talking to you all and speaking to you soon. Thank you.